Hello, here I am visiting you in Brazil. It's a great pleasure for me to join you. My name is Frank Pucelik. I'm one of the three crazy characters that were responsible for building NLP a long time ago. It's a pleasure for me to spend time with you. I've been asked to talk to you about the essence of NLP, the center, the heart of NLP. For me, that's very easy to do. It's kind of more like talking about the heart of myself in some ways. In the late 60s, Uncle Sam sent me to a place where there wasn't a lot of fun. I spent a year in the jungle in Southeast Asia. When I came back from that, my personality was fairly well destroyed. I went back to college, the college that I had left before, and but after the war, and 4 years in the military. I was much more motivated to do well in university, so I did well, very, very well, at a college in San Diego, California. After that, I transferred to UC, University of California at Santa Cruz, and was lucky enough to meet a young man named Richard Bandler. Richard Bandler was wanting to make some money to pay his bills, so was I. We were both students at UC Santa Cruz, and we were both real good at doing Gestalt. So we started to train students at the university in Gestalt skills, basically by using them and demonstrating, and by talking about Gestalt and working on them. Richard had written a book called The Gestalt Approach, An Eyewitness to Therapy, which was really an incredibly good book. After all the study that I had done of Gestalt, I considered the book that Richard edited, Fritz Perl's manuscripts, to be one of the most understandable books about Gestalt I'd ever read. And I had studied Gestalt a great deal and other forms of psychotherapy, a great deal at the university that I came from in San Diego. So here Richard and I were, and we're doing Gestalt training groups in 1971. And making some money and having fun and teaching people how to take care of themselves, right? And we're curious and we want to know how to do it better, and there's a brand new linguistics instructor that arrives at the university, a guy named John Grinder. And after 4 or 5 months of Richard picking at him and threatening him and challenging him in every way that he could to come visit our training programs, because we wanted him to give us a different perspective on what we were doing. I mean, we could do Gestalt and we could help people and we could do a lot of things, but we wanted to do it better, faster, and to understand in a better way what we were doing. So Mr. Grinder came along, and after we cajoled him for a while, and started observing our groups, our Gestalt training groups at the university. After each group, John and Richard and I would get together, and John would ask Richard and I questions, very interesting questions, mostly about language patterns, or what later became the meta model. And we were excited. We thought, this is incredibly interesting, because Richard and I really didn't understand the complexity of the language structures and how important the language structure was. We were basically copying what we saw Fritz do, what we saw other good Gestaltists do, and then we were basically doing the same things, right? And without understanding exactly what, which is of course what almost everybody did in those days. So here's John Grinder, and we're talking, and after 3 or 4 months, maybe 10, 15 meetings together, the three of us, we noticed that there were other graduate students at the university that were also kind of hanging around, and we incorporated them into the discussions a little bit, and the next thing we knew, after another 3 or 4 months of having informal meetings, is that we were actually doing something pretty special, and that we had actually developed a group. And so we decided at that point to do it on purpose. And that was really the birth of Meta, and which is the original name of NLP. And so at that point then we started recruiting some good people, some good graduate students at the university, and actually started to set out to find models, to find people, actually, to find people who were really, really, really good at something. Now, out of luck or accident or destiny or something, we had the opportunity to, well, for one thing, to model Fritz, because we had a lot of his videotapes and a lot of his manuscripts, and Richard had already done a lot of writing about Fritz, and I had done a lot of practical training in Gestalt in San Diego. And so we had that as a source, and so we decided, well, why not? We'll do that first. So with John's help, he taught us the meta model, the 9 linguistic, well, there wasn't 9 in the beginning, it was 4 or 5, but we started paying attention to the patterns of language in Gestalt, and realized then that after another 6 months, 8 months, we realized that the language patterns were fairly easy to recognize and very, very important, but there was obviously more going on there. And so we started then immediately to understand what we call now calibrations, or expressions, emotions, and how the skillful use of calibrations or emotions would make the language patterns be more effective, more powerful, or for example, were there consistent emotions that went along with certain language structures? And of course there were. And so we started, whoa, that's really cool. And then we started to realize that there were an incredible number of behaviors that were built into the skills of some of these incredible people. I mean, at that time, Fritz, and things that Fritz couldn't do. So once we had studied Fritz for a while, we kind of realized, well, wait a minute, that if we're capable of figuring out the patterns that Fritz uses, or the patterns that he responds to, a reversed reference, Fritz had a very specific training, and Fritz believed before Gestalt, and had a very strong opinion that most of people's problems in their lifetime came from parents, relationships with parents. So he was very careful to talk about and ask about relationships with parents, and watch for what we now call calibrations, and especially negative calibrations, whenever any parents' names were mentioned, because according to Fritz, not consciously, but by his behavior, that was his signal that, aha, this is something to do with mother, or something to do with father, or whatever. So he would watch for the calibrations, and then pay attention to the language structures, and that would give him his observation, or his critical, what we later learned to call critical observations. What are the things that Fritz notices, verbally or non-verbally, that he then has a systematic behavioral response to? Wow. Once we understood that, and once we found those critical observations and matched them up with critical behaviors, we realized that we were basically codifying or building a model around the keys to the effectiveness of, in this case, Fritz Perls or Gestalt. Wow. And guess what? 90% of the rest of the conversation was not necessary. It was extra. Or it was Fritz's going through all of his repertoire of investigation, looking for the specific observations that he was after. So he would kind of throw out a ton of questions and observe until he went, oh, bing, there's the one I want. Oh, bing, here's the language structure. Oh, this is what I'm after. This is what I want to find out. Now, once I have this, then I know what to do. Well, could it be done quicker? Could it be done easier? Could it be done more systematically? Well, of course. It was very interesting for us, for example, when Fritz would train therapists for 10 years, for 15 years. People would actually study with Fritz Perls whenever they had the opportunity to go to seminars, to go to training programs, to meet him at Esalen, to wherever he was, to watch him work and ask him questions and study his skills. Right? Well, so there was 40 or so therapist watching Fritz work. And Fritz would work with a client. And after 5 or 10 minutes, Fritz would say, okay, put your mother in the chair. And tell your mother, Mother, I hate you. And we saw the expressions on the psychotherapist's face in the audience. Like, what? Why? Tell your mother you hate her. And the person would say, well, my mother's not here, or I don't know what you mean, or something. And you say, you're making me sick. Tell the person. Tell your mother, Mother, I hate you. Say it to your mother. And the person would say it, and then little by little would build and build and build, and have a great cathartic experience, and break the chair into pieces, and reintegrate all of her own beautiful parts and characteristics, and boom, she's a new person. And in an hour and a half, and people had been working with this person for 10 years, and was not able to accomplish anything with this person. Fritz could do a miracle in an hour and a half. So the person leaves, and Fritz says, and now I do have questions. And the people would look at him and say, Mother in the chair? Why? She didn't say anything about her mother. She didn't say anything about she hated somebody. She said nothing about any of those things. And Fritz would look at them and say, introjection. You must recognize introjection. And people would look at him and say, what? What are you talking about? Introjection. When one person sees something in another person they hate or they love, and because they can't face this situation in themselves, they project this situation on the other person. They see this characteristic in the other person, and they say to themselves, oh, this in you I hate. You are that person, you are terrible, you are this, you are that. When in fact they're actually trying to hate themselves, but they don't want to hate themselves, so they hate the other person. Or they love the other person. They can't love themselves, so they love the other person. It's introjection. Okay? And people would look at him and say, what the hell are you talking about? How do you know what it is? And they say, it's introjection. You must feel it here. Feel it right in here. And we would watch these people look at their stomach, and then look at Mr. Pearls and say, excuse me, I don't feel anything. And he said, you must feel the strength of this introjection right here in your center. Your center tells you when the person is retroflecting. I'm sorry, retroflecting. Retroflection. Not the other one. Retroflection. Okay, this is a common case of retroflection. And the people would say, Mr. Pearls? Sorry, my stomach isn't talking. Oh, you must build your intuition. You must build your understanding of the common case of retroflection. Retroflection. And people would study with him for 10 years and never figure out what the hell retroflection is. And so, what did we discover very quickly? Whenever he's talking to the first 5 minutes with the person, whenever he says parents, what does he see on the face of the client? Watch this. The little, boom, parents, boom. Father, nothing. Mother, boom. Okay, parents, boom. Father, nothing. Mother, boom. He sees 5 or 6 times in either direct or indirect comment about the mother. He sees this very slow. I'm making it big so you can see it. But more commonly, it was more like, it's a little what we call a micro expression, right? Just a slight negative reaction. Now, so he has one piece. The second piece was very interesting because the same person would say things like, the world is terrible, everything happens to me, but people always take advantage of me. And no matter what happens in the world, something always ends up with me. And I just can't seem to have my life become okay because people are always taking advantage of me. Right? Now, we call that in meta model reversed reference, right? Where the person who creates the sentence is actually the receiver of the action of the verb, not the actor. So now Fritz hears those backward sentences. Fritz sees the little expression on the face, and what does he say? Put your mother in the chair and tell your mother, Mother, I hate you. Because if you take the world as against me and you turn it back around to natural form, it says, I am against the world. Well, obviously you can't be against the world, so who are you against? Or the micro expression, mother. So tell your mother you hate her. Now, people would say, wow, that's magic, it's incredible. How did he know? He has great intuition. No. He saw one expression 5 times, and he heard backward sentences 3 out of 10. Well, can I teach somebody to hear backward sentences and recognize micro-expressions? Of course. Are those the 2 critical observations for that specific event? Yes. What did he do? He took the observation and he put the mother in the chair and turned the sentence back around and asked for it to be said in natural form. Wow, magic. Is it magic? No. It's skill. It's skill. Now, does he know what skill he has? No. That's what drove us crazy in NLP. Because if you ask Fritz Perls or Virginia or Eric Berne or Milton Erickson or any of the greats of those times, if you ask them, why do you do that? What did you see? What did you observe? How did you make that decision? Milton's answer was always the same. And drove Steve Gilligan crazy, and John. Milton's answer was always the same. I don't know. And no matter what question you ask Milton, I don't know. And what was he kidding? No, he didn't know. He reacted to the situation as it happened, and because he had learned those patterns over many years. Right? How many of you know the critical decisions you make when you steer a car? Because when you're driving down the road, and every time you do this, most of those little micro movements save your life. But you're not thinking to yourself, oh, I need to make a 4-degree correction to the right because there's a little bit of, the road's a little bit crooked on this way. Oh, then I need to come back 3 degrees to the left. Oh, and now I need to go 1, 2 degrees to the right. Oh, and now I need to... You're not thinking that. You're reacting to stimulus that you see, that you've learned over time to react to very skillfully. But you no longer think about it. In fact, it's important that you no longer think about it, because if you try to think about it, you're going to be too slow and you're going to make mistakes. That's the human skill. That's the human condition. Now, that's incredible skill, and it's incredibly dangerous, because you assume that the thing you learned long ago in a particular situation is equally skillful and equally helpful now. Or the way I learned to respond to Mama when I was 3, and Mama said, you're in trouble. And so I went like this, and I said, okay, Mama, I'm sorry. Okay? When you're 35, and your boss looks at you and said, why did you do this? And you look down like this, and you say, I'm sorry. Okay, your boss is going to think something's not right with you and that you need help. When you were 3.5, worked perfect. Okay? Or, so people carry these habits and patterns into their future, which usually were learned in a very good situation or a very appropriate situation, which are no longer valuable. So what is NLP? Well, one of the things that we do in NLP, one of the things that you do in NLP, is to go into your repertoire of automatic reactions to things and find out which of those work, which of those create for yourself the kind of behavior, the kind of reaction that helps you be successful in the world. Okay? That's number one. When an NLP person is trained over a period of time, one of the things that we try to do is we have silly names for it. We try to call it clean up our neurology. Get our own problems out of the way. Understand our own patterns. Now, some of us call that moving your map. Map and territory, right? Which is one of the presuppositions of NLP. The essence of NLP, in many ways, is for the practitioner to be able to get past their own mirror. Okay? Do you have any idea what that means? To get past your own mirror. Almost all communication is done in a mirror. I talk to me, you talk to you. And we call that talking to each other. And that's how arguments work. I argue with me when I think I know what you're actually meaning and saying, and you argue with you, and we call that each other, and we get divorces or damage our kids or all the other wonderful things that we do in our lifetimes. NLP says, ooh, we. You're human. A human has the opportunity, you have a second brain. You don't have to react like an animal. See, animals learn to stimulus and response. You bing, bing. You do this, that means I got to do this. And that's how it works. And that's how they live, because they have one brain. Humans have been given this second brain, built, geneticized, you call it what you want. But we have these two hemispheres, which gives us the opportunity to do some very strange things. Very strange, very wonderful things, and very dangerous. We have the ability to observe our own behavior while we're behaving. You know what I mean. How many of you have been doing something in the world, right? And you're saying something, and at the same time, part of you is saying, Pucelik, shut up. Stop talking. Don't say it, right? But you say it anyway, right? Or maybe not the Pucelik part, but you say, you talk to yourself while you're doing something stupid, and you know it's stupid, and sometimes you do it anyway. Why? Why are we doing that? Okay, why? Because that's what we learned, and that's how it works, and that's what we're going to do because we don't have choice. Or unless we learn how to create choice again, how to reclaim our ability to be a human being. You see, you guys might think I'm a little unusual here, but I understand NLP maybe in a very different way than most people do. You see, during our growing up years, we basically are taught to lose our choices. That this means that, this is good, this is bad, no, don't do this, no, you must do this, you can't do that. And the meta model or the meta model violations are used to teach us. Now, teach, to control us, to build us, to give us the right way to live, okay? And of course there's value to that. We have cultures and religions and government structures and all of those things. And in order to live in the culture that we grow up in, we have to learn to fit it, okay? And that fitting it is oftentimes losing your choice. I mean, I might want to walk down the street stark raving naked, but I can't do it, because if I do, it doesn't fit the limits or the norms of my culture, and I will be taken off the street and put in a place with a coat that has arms that, tie in the back, or something like that. That's an overly simple example, but there are thousands of little examples of how we are told this is the right way to react. So literally, in the simplest form, what we do is we lose our ability to be a human being, because human beings choose. Human beings can choose. Interesting? If you don't choose, are you a human? I don't think so. I think you become an animal. Okay, sometimes being an animal is quite fun. And I do it. But I try to make sure that I do it by choice. Interesting? Let me give you an example that you might find interesting. I see my son, and I'm very, very close to my son. And thank goodness. I have a very, very beautiful relationship, at least in my mind. I hope in his too. I think he'd say the same. And when I see him, I'm so touched. I'm so, oh my gosh, because I don't see him very often. And so I see him, and the feeling inside of me is huge. And I melt inside. And I want to run up to him and grab him and hug him and kiss him and so forth. He's 45. And with him, that's fine. His friends think I'm a little strange, but that's okay. He tells them, it's okay, it's my dad. So, but here I am, and that feeling in me is very, very strong, right? But I don't let it happen right away. So I see him, and I start to melt, and I say to myself, stop. And then I think to myself, is this reaction okay? Is this appropriate now? Now I do that more or less with the feeling, but I stop for a moment. I take a breath, and then I hear myself say yes, and then I go melt. Okay, and then and then I have a great time, and I love my kid, and it's great fun. And he's 45, but I still consider him Like, you know how parents are. So there I am. Now, why do I do that? What do you think? Think about that. Why do I do that? Why would that be a good thing to do? I mean, you don't even know why I do it, but why would that be a good thing to do? Because my son also raced motorcycles, okay, for years. And there were times when I would go to his races and watch him race, and he would crash. And that's what happened to motorcycle racers. And I would run up to him, and I would see him laying on the ground with blood coming out of him, or a broken arm, or whatever. And if I come up to him and I go, blah, and I fall apart, and oh my gosh, my boy, my baby, yuck, yuck, and I can't do anything, and I could actually hurt him by not being able to have a different state. Okay, so I come up to him, I see him there, and immediately I go, no. Doctor. Now, I was a corpsman in the United States Marine Corps and was in conflict and so forth. So for me, first aid is kind of automatic if I'm a corpsman. Okay? So I see my boy, bing, corpsman, doctor. And I do whatever I need to do to stop the bleeding, to minimize any movement, to isolate the fracture, to do whatever. Okay? And then I make sure that the people who come from the ambulances and so forth, that they know what to do, they take him away, okay? Now, they go to the hospital, I go to the hospital, I make sure he's okay. After that, I sit down in the car and I shake and cry, okay? After, okay? Not before. I noticed a whole lot of parents in those situations that were so dangerous to their own children when their children crashed. Because the parents are running up and grabbing and pulling, and I saw situations where the kids could have been crippled for life because the parents didn't have choice. So, how do you lose choice? You don't lose choice in the bad times, you lose choice in the good times. So when I see my son and I'm happy to see him and I have no choice and I blech, and I go and I melt, then I'm also going to melt when he's laying on the ground bleeding. So choice. I want choice. What does NLP teach? Choice. The essence of being a human being, the essence of NLP is for all of us to become truly capable, talented human beings with choices on how we react to the situations around us. All of the study that we did on NLP, all of the study that we did on calibrations, on complex equivalences and embedded suggestions and the Milton model and the meta model and rep systems and major beliefs and all of it was all done to do two things. Two things. Okay? One, for me to understand how other people are doing miracles. What are they really doing? Not what do they say they're doing. What is the critical observation and the critical behavior? One, in so many different situations, whether it's mathematics or physics or how is that person thinking? Because it is their thinking that's creating the genius. It's their observations and their thoughts that are creating their behaviors, and their behaviors are magic. Whether it's an incredibly intelligent academician, or whether it's Virginia Satir, or whether it's some great sports person, it doesn't matter. How are they thinking? And what are they observing, and what are they doing with that observation? Whoa. That's called modeling, and that's called modeling excellence. That's first. Second, if I'm going to be able to do those things, I'm going to have to somehow figure out how to get me out of the way. Interesting? How to get me out of the way. Because I have my neurology, I have my reactions, I have my boundaries, I have my limits, I have my complex equivalences, I have my truths, I have my beliefs. And as long as I am stuck in that prison, then my understanding of how or why somebody else does something is a nice intellectual activity, but I'm certainly not going to be able to do it because I'm in the way. So, what's the second point of NLP? The essence of NLP is to give me the ability to recognize my own patterns and to move them, to get them out of the way, so that I can truly take on the patterns and the skills of other greats. Now, we used to do that as humans, But we used to do it in one field over a period of 50 years. And we called those apprentices. And apprentices found a master, and they worked with the master in some skill area, whatever it was, for many, many, many years. And they learned little by watching each behavior, by watching, by observing, by doing the work that the master didn't want to do anymore, in order to have the opportunity to be in the same room with the master. Now, little by little, the master said, here, you can do this now, or add this now, or I want you to do this now. So the master brought you along for years and years and years and years and years and years. And then maybe you were graduated to a helper. Not just an apprentice, but a helper. And then maybe you were graduated to the point of being a real team member for a master. Wow. 25 years? Okay. And that's incredible status in the world that you came from. Incredible status. You're a helper of this person? Oh my God. That's amazing. You have such a great opportunity to learn from the master. So 25, 35 years later, the master is gone for whatever reason, and now the best of the best becomes the master. And then the master takes on the job of bringing up new apprentices. Well, that used to be how we did all this study of excellence. And there's still a lot of value in doing things like that. I watched a young man, a basketball player. I like sports a lot. And so I use NLP in sports a great deal. I use NLP everywhere, but in sports is one of my favorite places. I'm watching a young guy play guard on a basketball team. A junior college basketball team, not a big deal, but this kid, he's not tall, not particularly tall, he's not short, but he's about medium height. He's fast, but not very fast. He's not faster than anybody else. He can jump, but not particularly high. He shoots good, but not great. But he dominates basketball games, and the team he plays on wins again and again and again. And the team is okay, but here's this kid. He doesn't make a lot of points. He doesn't stand out, except if you understand basketball and you watch him play, you realize this kid is special. This kid is unique. And I used to watch him a lot and try and figure out what the hell. One of the things I noticed is his natural gifts. Incredible peripheral vision. The kid could see, I think he could see behind himself, but his peripheral vision was way past 180. It had to be in area 210, 220, something out there, way out there, number one. Number two, the kid could make critical observations at a very, very, very high level and in peripheral vision. And this, I wondered how he did that. But I didn't get a chance to talk to him for a while. One evening I was leaving the university and they had outdoor basketball courts, okay, with no lights, and it was dark. And I heard a couple of guys playing basketball on the dark courts. And I thought, whoa, that's pretty interesting, because it was really quite dark. Not pitch black, but close. Okay? So I walked out 3 or 4 courts down out in the back territory of the university there. And as I got closer, I realized that somebody was running hard and dribbling, and a couple of guys were dribbling basketballs back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I thought, whoa, that's interesting. And then I realized that I could hear the balls hitting the backboards, and going through the chains. They had chain nets on these particular things. You could hear them. Ching, ching, bum, 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 bang, 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 ching, ching, bang, 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 bang. What in the heck? That pattern is way too consistent. So as I got close enough, and I got to where I could actually see, of course you know what I found, right? That kid that plays on the basketball team, as guard, he's by himself on a totally black court, by himself, with 2 basketballs. He's running full speed from one end to the other, dribbling both balls at the same time, in the dark, passing them back and forth, behind him, between his legs, in front of him, one ball to the other, with the other. And when he gets to the basket, he jumps up in the air and he shoots, one right-handed and one left-handed. As he passes underneath the basket, they both come up, go ching, ching, and when they hit the ground, he's already running in the other direction. Both balls, bing, 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 ding, ding, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, for hours. For hours. That boy was out there making sure that he knew by sound, he knew by feel, he knew by everything that he was doing, and never had to look at the ball, and always knew where he was in position in the court without being able to see it, by the number of steps, by the sound, by the slightest visual perception. Now I watched him play basketball again on the team, and I saw him do things that were just miracle. As far as I'm concerned, miracle. And I copied him, and I use a lot of the same strategies now when I play basketball. But for example, he's dribbling the ball, and there's a guy guarding him, and he's looking at him, and there's one of his guys is right over here on the side, right? And there's a guy guarding him. So he's dribbling the ball, and he dribbles the ball away from his body while he's looking this direction, pretty close, much closer to the defensive man for his partner, right? And the defensive man gets interested. He goes, oh boy, I'm going to steal, I'm going to steal, I'm going to steal. And he jumps forward to steal the ball. Now, the minute he does, this kid dribbles the ball one bounce across to this side. The guy who was left turns and runs to the basket, right? But there's a defensive man underneath the basket. So the guy bounces the ball one time, picks it up two-handed, looks at the man on the left, and goes like this to throw it to the man on the left, right? And the defensive man in the middle steps over to cut off the pass, which makes the guy running this way absolutely wide open, and he goes and throws the ball to the man that's wide open underneath the basket. The guy makes a free basket, nobody's there to guard him, and all he did was pass to the free guy, if you weren't watching. But if you were watching, and you see he set up the whole thing. He pulled the defensive man off. He pulled the defensive man out of the backfield, the center, who was supposed to be the guy to pick up the other guy. He pulled him off. He looked over at the other guy in the corner and made the motion to throw to him, and that man jumped in the wrong direction. Boom, free basket. Time after time after time after time after time after time, on all night long in a basketball game. And that strategy, this strategy, stop them, drive stop, shoot stop, touch stop, double pass, don't pass. Beautiful. The man was a master. And I learned so much watching that young man play basketball. And when I play basketball now, the guys I play with that are faster, stronger, younger, jump higher, shoot better, they cannot understand how this fat old man beats them every single time. And it's very simple. I outthink them. Why? Because I studied the masters and learned the same patterns. And oh boy, do I like that. So, NLP. I had the opportunity to model a professional American football player who's a receiver of passes, one of the best I've ever seen in pro football history, a guy named Lance Allworth. I met him and talked to him far after he had retired. And I asked him how he did his magic, because he was magic. And he told me. He told me about drawing lines on the field, about seeing the gold lines and the red lines, and using the gold lines to do this, the blue line. And so I learned how to do it. And I tried it. Works fantastic. Then I taught it to my 11-year-old son. And I was a coach of a football team in Oklahoma of 11 and 12-year-olds. And I taught them all the same thought processes of very, very successful professional athletes. The coaches on all the rest of the teams could not understand what happened to them. We won games 60-0, 60-0, all year long. Okay? Those games never scored more than 10 or 12 points, 16 points, 18 points. That was unusual. So it was 6 points, 6 points, 6 points. In some times the games were 18-12, or 6-0, or maybe 12-6, and that was it, because it was like, just hand the big guy the ball and get out of the way. We were running pro football patterns with 11 and 12-year-olds from day one. All the cross blocks, all the different strategies of the linemen, the traps, the guards pulling, everything. Why? Because I taught the kids how to do it. People say, well, you can't teach kids how to do that. They're wrong. I taught those kids to think exactly like professional players. and to use all the same patterns at all the different positions. NLP. The essence of NLP, two things. For you to learn how to observe the people around you and watch for those, search for those critical observations and critical behaviors or systematic behavior to follow that observation or model excellence. Find people that are good at things and watch and observe, and then if you can, once you've got a pretty good set of observations on they did this, they did that, this you understand, this you don't understand, now get a chance to talk to them and say, okay, look, I saw you do this, I saw you do that, I thought that was great, I know this, wow, super, and I got it. What were you seeing? What were you doing? What were you thinking? What were you feeling? And how did you do this? You know, and a lot of times you'll be surprised how they might not be able to tell you because they don't know. Ask meta-model questions. Tell them, I observed this. I saw this change in calibration. What happens to you when you change like that? What do you think or feel? Oh my goodness gracious, you can unlock the magic in people's behaviors. And then, of course, the second and the critical essence of NLP, move yourself out of the way. Clean up your neurology. Find your own patterns. Find your own boundaries. Find your own limits. Have people help you do that. For the original NLP team, well, 14, 15 people that worked together for 7 years, 20 hours a week, 60 hours a week. We had several commitments that we made to each other. One of them was vital. Anytime I see you behaving inside of a boundary or a limit that I think is limiting to you, or that interferes with your flexibility or your freedom to make choices, I'm going to attack it. I'm going to attack that limit. Now, be with 15 very observant people, all of them committed to the same process with each other for 7 years. It's very difficult to come out of there with a lot of your craziness that you went in with. They built me. They taught me. They trained me. They bothered me. They manipulated me. They beat me. They made me cry. They made me laugh. They made me hate them and love them alternatively. And I am so privileged and so proud to have been part of that group and part of that team that created NLP under the guidance of John and Richard mostly, and myself from time to time. It is an incredible privilege and an honor to be, quote unquote, an NLP person. I can't tell you, I had the opportunity to build myself after the war, and the need to build myself after the war. And thank God for John Grinder and Richard Bamber, because they helped me become a human that I am today. I love what I do. I have a great life. I help thousands and thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. I supervise treatment programs for young drug addicts and alcoholics, and have pictures of myself and several hundred very, very successful drug addicts living proud and happy in the world. I've been a very lucky man and did a lot of hard work to get where I am, and I'm very proud of it. The essence of NLP is learn how to observe people that are really, really good, and clean up the mess that's in your head so that you can use those observations in a very powerful way. It's a pleasure for me to have spent time with you guys. I hope you found this valuable and important for you. NLP brings a person back to being a human being. You have the right to be a human being. We must reclaim that right. Meta is one way to do that. I hope that it helps you. Goodbye for now.